I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, Rebecca. So my name is Kathy Stickney from the University of Indianapolis, and today we're presenting on a case for clinical residencies in developing teacher leaders. So this is a collaborative project between our School of Education and our College of Arts and Sciences. And so with me here today, also presenting are Deb Sachs and Jean Lee from our School of Education, Kim Baker from the Biology Department, and Jasminique Potter, who is a recent Noyce program grad and also a math teacher. Our work is supported by NSF Noyce, and we are in our 4th year of a Track 1 grant. So next. So I'm going to start with a brief session overview. So first of all, we will describe our clinical residency teacher preparation program, which we call Teach STEM Cubed, or TS3 for short. And we're going to particularly emphasize our strategies in our TS3 curriculum for how we introduce our pre-service teachers to the various components of teacher leadership. And we'll also go over an overview of teacher leadership competencies. Now, these were kind of designed and published in 2018 collaboratively by the Center for Teaching Quality, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, and the National Education Association. And so we'll talk about how we embed these teacher leadership competencies into our curriculum. And finally, we're going to give evidence of how this actually works by sharing stories of 3 of our alumni, including that of Jazz, who is with us here today. And we would very much welcome any questions, comments, and discussion after our presentation. So this leads us to our driving question. How do we develop teacher leaders in our pre-service teacher clinical residency program? So with that, I'll hand the mic over to Kim.
So what is Teach STEM Cubed? This is a 1-year urban clinical residency with 36 hours of graduate coursework and 2 years of post-mentoring residency support, which is provided by our university. So the 2 years of mentoring serves as an extension of the urban clinical residency, and each candidate is assigned to a content area mentor, which is a practicing or retired master science or math teacher. And this individual then maintains regular contact with the candidate via in-person prior to the pandemic or through virtual technologies. The coursework and clinical residency experiences are integrated. So it is a full-time 1-year intensive program that is aligned with LEA calendars. So our scholars then within 1 year are going to earn their Master's of Arts in Teaching degree, along with licensure to teach in a specific STEM content area. So our candidates are immersed in partner schools for the entire school year, and these are Indianapolis area public schools. The scholars are strategically placed in our schools from the first day of teacher meetings until the end of the academic school year. Our partner districts administrators, they identify excellent science and math teachers to serve as program leaders. So these clinical faculty then serve as school-based liaison between the university and the district. Furthermore, our scholars have cooperating mentor teachers who host our scholars for the entire year-long residency. And our cooperating mentor teachers, also referred to as CMTs, are chosen based on their demonstrated teaching ability, as well as their ability to effectively mentor our scholars. So the curriculum then is going to include a variety of education pedagogy, as well as math and science courses. So our Noyce scholars actually take 3 weeks of coursework at our university prior to the beginning of the school year. So the program starts in the summer so that they can develop foundational skills to be ready to enter the classroom on day 1. And this includes things such as learning about literacy strategies and differentiated instruction. And then our scholars also complete an orientation at each of the partner districts so they can learn about the structure and initiatives prior to actually being immersed in their assigned school. And then, as we indicated, this is a collaborative effort between faculty in the School of Education and faculty in the College of Arts and Sciences. And so our content area faculty, so myself, I'm in the area of biology. I work with the Noyce scholars on PBL projects with a biology-based theme. And then each of our scholars will also be with their appropriate content area expert. And so that's an overview of our program, and I will turn it over to my colleague.
So I'm Deb Sachs. I'm in the School of Education at the University of Indianapolis, and we're going to talk about how we have used teacher leadership competencies and immerse those throughout our program to produce some teacher leaders in a relatively short period of time. So I think that we'd all agree we want to develop teacher leaders as our candidates progress through our programs. But what exactly do we mean when we say teacher leader? A quick Google search reveals that there have been many attempts to define teacher leadership. You've got Charlotte Danielson and her ASCD publication, Teacher Leadership That Strengthens Professional Practice, Barnett Berry's work around teacherpreneurs, and many, many others. For our work, we've chosen to focus on the teacher leadership competencies collaboratively developed and published, as Kathy said, by the Center for Teaching Quality, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, and the National Education Association. So those three groups got together and came up with these teacher leadership competencies. This particular framework looks at 4 specific competencies of teacher leadership as illustrated in this graphic. There are overarching competencies of instructional leadership, association leadership, policy leadership, and then underneath each of those, there are some specific competencies as well. We will look at each of these in detail as we progress through this evening. If you look around the gray ring, you'll see the progression of a teacher leader from emerging to developing to performing and ultimately to transforming. So let's look a little more detail at the overarching competencies as we move into that. So overarching competencies line up nicely with various standards. If you think about the CAPE standards, you think about INTAS standards that are related to teaching. And these overarching competencies include, as you can see here, reflective practice, personal and interpersonal effectiveness, being able to communicate, being a continuous lifelong learner, being able to work in groups and collaborate with one another, as well as knowing about adult learners, which since we are a graduate program, we basically have a lot of adult learners, and when they get out to teach in their schools, they're going to be working with adult learners as well. And finally, especially that has come into play in our pandemic here, is they have to be pretty technologically savvy as well. So we're going to take a look here at our program outcomes for a second, just to see how they connect to the overarching competencies. So if you look at our program outcomes, where we're talking about content mastery, culture responsive curriculum, developmentally responsive curriculum, looking at that idea of can I institute a variety of instructional strategies in my classroom, employ differentiated instruction, facilitate effective and individual group interactions, there's that collaboration, assess my impact, etc. We have these outcomes that have underneath them measurables for each outcome. And those measurables move candidates from simply having knowledge about something to being able to identify it in practice and then to be able to incorporate it into their practice. So by combining the overarching competencies with the way we scaffold our program, and particularly our outcomes, we're able to develop teachers who move from being emerging leaders to being transformative leaders in a relatively short period of time. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Jean Lee to talk about how we do some of that scaffolding in each of the leadership competency areas.
Thanks, Deb. So as Deb described the 9 program outcomes, I'm going to talk about those teacher leadership, how teacher leadership is scaffolded. First, these overarching competencies of instructional leadership, association leadership, and policy leadership are embedded in the Teach STEM Cube clinical residency program and also in the mentoring program. To note, the mentoring program is for first and second year teachers. After they've graduated our program, it's our university-based induction retention program that helps to sustain our graduates in the teaching profession. And during our mentoring program, our teachers are provided with timely and relevant workshops so that they can continue to exhibit teacher leadership. So the first one, instructional leadership, our scholars are expected to regularly reflect on their clinical experience, their teaching episodes, and their educational dispositions. So when they exit the program, reflection is part of their second nature. We also have a video club where scholars videotape their teaching, they watch each other, and they comment on each other's instructional practices. So this idea of reflecting and sharing and distributing is a common practice that's welcomed in our program. Scholars also design a project-based learning unit that Dr. Baker had just said, and they design it for 15 weeks, and then they present those PBL units to various constituents, such as their community partner, who's an integral component of their unit, their cooperating mentor teachers, and even principals where their scholars are in the clinical residency settings, and also PBL trainers and teachers and various math and science faculty at University of Indianapolis and so forth. Scholars also complete an outcomes project during their last semester with us, and they describe their journey of becoming a teacher and the key components of what they learned, and the principals that hired them are also invited to this, and all of the Teach STEMQ program faculty. Scholars also develop an action research project that they want to investigate during their first year of teaching. Scholars also develop a professional development module that they can take with them and share with other teachers in their new building. We found that this allows new teachers to feel like they have something to offer, even if they are a new teacher. And in fact, we've gotten feedback from administrators saying that our scholars don't operate as first-year teachers, which is a good thing. And throughout the mentoring program, they present strategies that worked and successes that they've had during their first years of teaching. The next one is association leadership. We make it a requirement for our scholars to be a member of a professional organization. Many of the scholars and the assignments that are given require scholars to be a member of national organizations such as NSTA, NCTM, and also math and science teacher organizations. We also require scholars to co-present with us at math and science teacher state conferences. And in fact, I think on Monday of this week, we had our scholars present with us on their project-based learning units on how they are culturally relevant in the math and science classrooms. And the last one is policy leadership. We have scholars create a video leveraging the teaching profession, and they encourage prospective students to pursue teaching as a career, and they reflect on what they learned in our program. We found that this has been a really cool marketing tool because they are basically helping us do internal marketing, recruitment, so that other people can hear about what their experience in the Teach STEMQ program is like. And they also take course in urban school and schooling, and they dig into data and the policies that are being enacted in each of those districts based on the data. And we get them to critically think about the opportunities that students are then provided or how that impacts the kiddos at their school. And so in this section, we're going to now share some stories of 3 program graduates using instructional policy and association initiatives as indicators of accomplishment and leadership. These stories will illustrate how our program prepares pre-service teachers and early career teacher leaders and demonstrates the impact of these 3 teacher leaders on their students, their schools, communities, and their profession.
So let's begin by looking at a specific competency of policy leadership. And as can be seen from the graphic here, policy leadership includes implementation of policy, advocacy for policy, and advocacy of policy, including even, in some cases, maybe policies that you don't agree with, but you have to find a way to get others on board, or you have to find a way to work around that policy. And then policy making and engagement. And if we move to the rubric, which is provided along with these competencies, we can see here that each of these components have specific details related to them. For example, for policy implementation, a transformative teacher leader moves into action at many levels. So not just within their school or in their own classroom, but outside of their school at perhaps the state and national level. As a policy advocate, a transformative teacher inspires others to act through convincing messaging and inspires the action of others to advocate for the profession. And then policymaking, as you can see in the rubric here, includes sustaining and building relationships. And if you think about what's going on in these descriptions, they all tie back to those overarching competencies as well. When you think about being able to communicate, being able to talk about adult learners, reflecting, and so forth. And then finally, policy engagement and relationships does include that influencing other teacher leaders. So we're going to go ahead and look at one of our candidates who exemplifies this concept of policy leadership and this policy competency. So Caitlynn Richardson is a teacher, a middle school teacher at Lyndhurst 7th and 8th grade center here in Indianapolis, Indiana. She graduated from our program in 2016. And so you can see that within a short 3 years, she has she became a member of the Teach Plus Indiana Teaching Fellowship, which is an advocacy fellowship, actually. So at a fairly young age, she was a member of that particular group. As part of her work with that group, she testified at the State House on HB 1009, House Bill 1009, which was a teacher residency bill. I'm sure that in your state, you're experiencing the same thing we are here in Indiana, and that is that there's a shortage, a major shortage of STEM teachers, especially qualified STEM teachers. And so having gone through a residency program, Caitlynn was sold on the value of residencies. And so she put together a testimony that she read at the State House. And just to talk a little bit about her effectiveness, that particular House bill did pass. We do have now a residency bill in the state of Indiana that provides some money for districts who may want to work with a university to develop a teacher residency program at their particular district. She was the 2019 recipient of a major award here in the state of Indiana that's given by the Hoosier Association of Science Teachers. She was about just 3 years into her teaching when she won that award. And then she was a presenter at the Hoosier Association of Science Teachers while she was in our program. As a science department chair and team lead, she has to advocate for purposeful instruction at her school and for effective instruction. And as a STEM committee member for STEM certification of her school, she's leading an initiative there to get her school to be a STEM certified school in the state of Indiana. So you can see that Caitlynn has been extremely involved in policy and advocacy for teaching and teachers. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Jean to talk about another one of our scholars.
Thanks. Before I do, I'm going to talk a little bit about instructional leadership, in which one of our scholars exemplifies. And some of the main components of instructional leadership is coaching, mentoring, facilitating collaborative relationships, and community engagement, awareness, and advocacy. So let's take a look at what this rubric is. So you can see here that for coaching and mentoring, a teacher utilizes multiple measures to identify effective teaching and successful student learning, and they connect with colleagues and create opportunities or partnerships. For facilitating collaborative relationships, a teacher is able to articulate ways to collaboratively improve the implementation of initiatives, programs, and policies, and objectively evaluate them, and to bridge diverse perspectives together. And the last one, for community awareness, engagement, and advocacy, the teacher facilitates genuine relationships with colleagues, students, parents, communities, policymakers to redefine and create culture where students, and especially those that are disenfranchised, grow and thrive. So what does this look like? Well, let's look at Olivia Birdsall. So she is our right now, well, she is a program graduate in 2013. So she has been teaching for a total of 8 years. And she is our math methods instructor currently and clinical faculty member who helps match our cooperating mentor teachers within her building with our scholars and helps facilitate the clinical residency experience for scholars in her program. One of the things that we've realized is that as we continue year after year in producing these scholars, they kind of come back to our program and help serve future teachers as well. She's presented at multiple state and national conferences, including presenting 2 times at the Woodrow Wilson Convening and presenting multiple times at her district's Professional Development Day. She's currently the mathematics department chair for her building. and the team head for the math curriculum adoption committee. And for the past 2 years, she's been piloting a mathematics curriculum called Illustrative Mathematics, and she's been providing feedback for the district on how it's going for her and for her students. And in 2018, she was invited by the curriculum coordinator to attend the conference about curriculum and was invited to join the piloting program early. And she has been an AVID site team member for 5 years. AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. And that is an effort to close the opportunity gap and improve the college and career readiness for high school, middle school students, especially those that have been traditionally underrepresented in higher education. She has participated in the Indiana Department of Education Math and Science Grant, which was called Creating Algebra Teaching Communities for Hoosiers. And it was a grant for school sites across Indiana to change what it means to teach and learn algebra. And she was also the 2018 Teacher of the Year for Lyndhurst 7th and 8th grade center. And that's the same school that she's been employed at since she was first hired. And she's also a member of the Wayne Township Women's Leadership Group. So this basically exemplifies how she has been really highlighting those aspects of instructional leadership. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about association leadership, which is the third component. And this one is leading with vision, leading with skill, organizing and advocacy, building capacity of others, and learning community and workplace culture. And so the rubric here.
Whoop, pay no attention to that.
So I'm going to go ahead and draw some highlights on this green rubric. The association leadership is about inspiring and energizing members to create and enact transformative vision and values, to reinvent and expand how an association does business by identifying and engaging new partners and resource providers. A teacher with these leadership abilities, they help build impactful networks to generate change, develop and implement professional growth opportunities, and allows others to see their greater value. And lastly, utilizes strategies to guide or lead new and innovative policies for the learning environment of students, teaching environment for educators, and the community environment for families. And so without further ado, we give the floor to Jasmine Neek, who is our previous program graduate.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It was funny when Deb went to my slide. I was like, already? It's my turn? Okay, I'll start. But yes, so my name is Jasmine Potter. Since I am actually on, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey in terms of how I found the Teach STEM Cubes program and where I am today. So prior to doing the Teach STEM Cubes program, I received my Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. So I worked as a design engineer in corporate America for about 5 years until I pursued my passion to teach. In me pursuing this passion, I wanted to find a program that was really a good fit. As some of you may know, there are a lot of teaching programs out there. I wasn't really sure how to go about doing so because I knew I needed, accreditation to teach, but I knew I didn't have a background in it. And I came across the Teach STEM Cube program where I could earn a master's degree in 1 year with intense, emphasis on intense, studying, as well as being able to have hands-on experience in the classroom. So I joined the program. I did complete it in that year. And it was a learning experience, I will say that. And it was a great learning experience. So one thing that I want to note, and it was in one of the slides before, but for the teaching, while we're in the program, we are required to present at a conference. And, as a student who is in school and, student teaching, it may seem like a lot, but I do feel like those experiences helped to shape me into the educator that I am today. One of my goals was always to pursue students to fall in love with and pursue STEM careers, being a double minority in a workforce that does not have a lot of Black females. I really just wanted to change that outlook and meet those students when they're in the classroom and teach math, because I just think math is awesome. With that being said, I do try to share those views with others as I meet them, other teachers, and really understand the why and connect with the why on why we became educators. In terms of the organizations that I have been involved with, while I was in the Teach STEM Cubed program, I actually was a part of the National Council of Teaching Mathematics, as well as the Indiana Council of Teaching Mathematics. And if it was not for this program, I probably would not have known about any of those organizations. And I think it's important to go beyond the classroom. For the ICTM, their mission is to be able to provide high quality and equitable math education that stretches beyond the content of math. And as a teacher, that vision aligns with what I want to do with my students. That's the goal that I have with my students. I want to teach them more than just algebra or more than just geometry. I really want to teach them how to be productive citizens once they are, out of the classroom. And within these organizations, I feel that I have learned so much, even with how I think. Anyone in this room right now, this virtual room, we all think differently. We all approach this teaching profession differently, and we have a lot to learn from one another. So where I am currently, I am still a part of the Indiana Council of Teaching Mathematics, and I am on the board as a middle school central representative. This allows me to be able to connect with retired teachers, current teachers all over the state of Indiana. And I have access to, one, the knowledge, but also to be able to connect and share the passion of teaching, see how other schools do how other schools' policies and the procedures, I'm losing my words, but I get to connect with other teachers, essentially what I'm trying to say, okay? And I do also have access to webinars, because I've been doing it coming up on a year now, and it's been during the pandemic. So I've been able to attend webinars, which have really impacted me to where I'm able to immediately implement things into my classroom, and it's beyond teaching. I'm a part of the Equity and Social Justice Committee. So with that, we just recently had a webinar on teaching social justice in the classroom and how to do that in a math classroom. And when you think about it, a lot of our natural responses that's like a social studies thing, like a history teacher, they can handle that. But how can you have students see the world from a math perspective, but also understand tolerance? So with this committee, it's within ICTM. I've been able to network again with people who have passions for math, but also passions to close certain gaps when it comes to equity and social justice. I'm also a team leader at my school. I was actually recommended after my first year of teaching to be a team leader. So I teach middle school, and a team leader is essentially just a group of students we have our students broken off into teams. So I'm over the teachers that teach certain, like the core contents for those set of middle school students. I believe that I've learned a lot in this experience, and even just with the program that I did at UND, it really taught me how to work with other educators. I was the only math teacher in the program, but I was able to work with science teachers. I was able to, find ways to do cross-curricular activities and be able to not only lead them on a content level, but also lead them to connect our passions for educating the students. I was nominated as the Chapel Hill Teacher of the Year for this current school year. And I was also selected, thank you, I was also selected to co-lead a book study on diversity and equity and really just social justice. One of our admin reached out to a couple of teachers who they saw leadership abilities in to lead these book studies to talk about how we can take a look at diversity, equity, social justice, read these books and apply these, what we have discussions around it, but also how can that affect us in our classroom? How can we be better teachers in our classroom? And I feel that the Teach Them Cube program has 100% prepared me. In a lot of these situations, people have sought after me because they saw my leadership teaching abilities. And it's been, I mean, this is my 3rd year of teaching, and this is, you know, what I have to show for it. And I'm really excited to see how I grow, even within ICTM. It's allowed me to set more goals for myself. There's an award that I can apply for, but it has a list of teaching organizations that I can join. And had I not been in this organization, I would not have, you know, had that door to open to see the other organizations that I could also be a part of. So I'm learning a lot. I'm so appreciative of this journey, and that's my story.
Thanks, Jazz. Appreciate it. So as you can see from the program graduates that we've highlighted this evening, our clinical residency program provides multiple pathways for our pre-service teachers to develop as teacher leaders and to demonstrate and continually grow in their leadership without leaving the classroom. And that's a key because so many times teachers have to leave the classroom to become leaders. And we want our really good teachers like Jazz to stay in the classroom and work with the students as they become leaders. So they truly do become true teacher leaders. So at this time, we're going to open the floor for discussion, questions, etc., to any of us about anything that we've talked about or whatever else you have.
Hi, I do have a bunch of questions, if you don't mind. I think you were expecting those from me. So very curious to know, what was your cohort size being track 1? And, you know, it's lovely to hear from Jasminique and also hear the stories from others, Caitlynn and others. But, you know, there might be cases where they were not that successful, and maybe you had retention issues, maybe you had, you know, pre-service teachers dropping out, some of the stories, some lessons learned. The second question I have is, how did you assess the pre-service teachers using the TLC competency rubric? Because personally, we found it very cumbersome. Because especially when you use the whole rubric and you're trying to align them with, you know, maybe at TPA, or you are aligning them with the state standards and the national board standards, it just becomes too much. And one special question for Jasminique, congratulations, you are a superstar. And the question I have for you is that, especially in your rotation, I mean, since it was a residency program, I'm assuming that you had clinical rotations, or you went to schools in your district close to your university. What was the demographic composition there, and what were some of the good practices that came out of it and some lessons learned for you? So first question, sample size, cohort. Third, competencies and assessments. And third question for Jasminique about her experiences with rotations, if you had any.
Okay. I'll field the first question, and anybody else feel free to jump in. We did not really have retention issues. What we had were recruiting issues. So we originally, our residency program was part of the Woodrow Wilson Fellowship, National Fellowship, and we had that program for 8 years. And Woodrow Wilson then pulled out of Indiana, and we wanted to continue that clinical residency because we had seen such good results with it. And so we wrote our grant and was funded. And it was funded in I believe it was March, late March was when we got word that it was funded to start in June. So recruiting was interesting. So our first cohort was rather small. We had 3 people. Our second cohort, we had, I believe, 5. In our third cohort, we had 5, and this year we have 7. So we're building that momentum number-wise. Unfortunately, our grant is also running out, but we were building that momentum. In terms of retention, we really haven't lost people along the way. When they become a part of the program, they've got a pretty good feel for what they're getting into, and they pretty much stick to it. And we've got 100% placement rate when they graduate. And I think we've only had one person who has, since graduate, she completed her requirements of 2 years of teaching. And then she had said she was going to not teach, and she moved, but took a teaching job. So we really have great retention.
Let's see. Thank you.
You're welcome. Second question was?
The assessment and aligning them with the TLC competencies rubrics.
Yes, actually, we did not go into this from the beginning with the idea of using the TLC rubrics. We went into it using our outcomes and our measurables, and also using rubrics that we've developed at the university for all of our pre-service teacher education programs. You can see that our last outcome is about being an advocate.
Yeah.
And what we discovered as we progressed through our program year after year was that our candidates were becoming teacher leaders quickly, being asked to be team leads, being asked to be department chairs. And so we really started looking at what are we doing that is leading to this. So it was really kind of a backwards look more than going into it with that concept of using that TLC. And anybody else feel free to chime in on that.
I think you pretty much said it all, Deb.
Okay. And then Jazz, I think the next question was for you.
Yes, so in the program, I am actually working in the township of which I did my mentor teaching. The demographics of that school is about almost a little bit under and over, but about a third white, a third Black, and 1/3 Hispanic. So I did do my clinical residency at the school in which or in the district in which I'm working in. And the positive thing for that was, or for the program, is that we start on the first day of school with the students, and we go almost up until the last day. I think my last day was literally like giving study guides for finals. So it is a very, starting off, we were there every day, but then as they kind of weave in our classes, we would go on certain days of the week while we had our classes at UND. But it definitely did, it allowed me to see the type of township and how they operated. And it made me more confident in my decision to work there full time.
Awesome. I think the logical step for the team is to go for track 2 or track 3 even.
There's a question in the chat for Deb or Jean.
I'm not muted. No, okay. We did not really track their visions from when they entered to when they left. So we didn't do like a pre and a post in any type of organized way. What we really, if that's what you're asking, I think it is. Jean, is that kind of what you think, or Brendan, if you can elaborate a little?
Yeah. Hi. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, and just thinking particularly, not even necessarily maybe like a pre and a post, but were they tracked at all, kind of, and what kind of attention was maybe given to like those pedagogical considerations throughout the program?
So one of the things that we do is in our mentoring program, we try to triangulate our data, right? We have our mentors. This is the university induction program that we have. So the first year and second year scholars, after they graduate our program, they're provided with a mentor that we provide from the university. And so while the scholar and the mentor, they work together and provide feedback about how things are going in their classroom and whatnot, we also wanted to triangulate that experience with the administrator in that building. And so it's not just a narrative between, oh, you know, this teacher and this external mentor that we hired, but we also want to see, is the administrator in the building that has hired and is formally observing our teacher, are we getting the same, you know, feedback? And so we do have these progress reports that we send out and collect 3 times during the academic school year, in which their immediate supervisor who formally observes them fills out, and it's based on Charlotte Danielson's framework, the 4 domains. And we ask them, how are they doing in these 4 domains? Just a really quick checkbox, because I know they're busy. And then, what are some, quick comments for suggestions and improvements or strengths. So that way we can monitor how they are doing after even they leave our program.
Thank you.
Back on that a little bit too. Our candidates, once they're hired, they do have that university provided mentor, which is a pretty unique situation. Schools in the area aren't really that familiar with that. So we've had to educate them about, there's going to be this other person coming in for 2 years, mentoring this candidate. And these progress reports that Jean talked about that we send out are strictly voluntary. We have no coercion, no way to say to these folks, do this. We simply ask, please do this. And we've had a phenomenal return rate on those, because the administrators have realized, hey, there's somebody out there who's willing to help my first year and second year teacher be a better teacher in addition to what we're doing in the schools. So that's really helped. I see Jean put in 100% return rate for this year on those. Wow. And again, strictly voluntary on the part of the administrators to do that. And we have not had any issues with union concerns or anybody with that being an external evaluator or an additional evaluation, because it's really meant just for growth.
But you did have an evaluator, right, for this project?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah, except that the sample sizes were really small. And I think that has been one of the concerns across several of our Noyce grants too. And of course, recruitment and then retention. In our case, we had one of the projects in rural Appalachia. So recruitment was a huge challenge, and those who we were successful to recruit, they wouldn't stay. So then chasing them for returning the money, I mean, that became another issue. So I think we have stories to tell. So at the end, it was more of a qualitative case study kind of an evaluation than having pre-post surveys. But data are data, and there are always stories to tell.
Right. Yeah, we actually went into it more with the idea of a qualitative study rather than that quantitative study. Okay, well, we are 2 minutes away from our official ending time, so I do want to acknowledge our 3 candidates who agreed to be part of this presentation, particularly Jazz for taking time out of her busy hybrid teaching right now, which is just kind of crazy around here. I'm sure it's true everywhere. And also thank the Noyce Fund for funding our program. So thanks for joining us this evening. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email or message and we'll get back to you.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.